The rain hit like tiny fists against my skin, each drop a sharp reminder that I was still alive, still running, still terrified. My bare feet slapped against the wet pavement, the sound swallowed by thunder that rolled across the sky like a warning. I couldn't feel the cold anymore. My body had gone numb somewhere between the third block and the moment I realized Marcus was still behind me. His voice cutting through the storm like a blade. "You think you can leave me?" His words chased me down the empty street, bouncing off brick walls and closed storefronts. "You're nothing without me." My lungs burned. The thin cotton dress I wore, the same one I'd put on this morning when everything was still okay, when I still believed his apology, clung to my body like a second skin, transparent and useless. Blood trickled down my temple where his ring had caught me, mixing with rainwater and blurring my vision. I didn't dare look back. Looking back meant slowing down. And slowing down meant he'd catch me. The street stretched endlessly before me, a corridor of darkness punctuated by the occasional streetlight that flickered and died. This part of downtown emptied after 9, when the offices closed and the restaurants shuttered their windows. I'd walked these blocks 100 times on my way home from my shift at the diner, always telling myself I was safe, always lying. My apartment was 10 blocks away. I'd never make it. A car turned the corner ahead, its headlights cutting through the rain like searchlights. Black. Sleek. Expensive in a way that didn't belong in this neighborhood. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if the driver had all the time in the world and no particular place to be. The engine purred, a sound I felt in my chest more than heard, and something about it made me think of a predator circling prey. Behind me, Marcus's footsteps grew louder. He was close now, so close I could hear his breathing, ragged and furious. The black car stopped at the corner, idling. Rain cascaded off its polished hood, and through the tinted windows, I saw nothing. Just my own reflection, a ghost of a girl with wild eyes and darker secrets written across her bruised skin. I didn't think. Thinking was a luxury I couldn't afford. I ran straight for the car, my feet sliding on the wet asphalt, and grabbed the back door handle. Locked. My heart dropped into my stomach, and I pounded on the window with my palm, the sound desperate and pathetic even to my own ears. "Please." The word tore from my throat. "Please let me in." For a moment, nothing happened. The car sat there, a fortress of metal and glass, and I stood in the rain like a fool, waiting to be caught. Marcus was 20 feet away now, maybe less. I could see his face in the glow of a street lamp, red with rage, twisted into something I no longer recognized. Then I heard it. A soft click, the door unlocking. I yanked it open and threw myself inside, pulling the door shut behind me with enough force to make the whole vehicle shudder. The interior smelled like leather and something else, cedar, maybe, or sandalwood. Dark and rich and expensive. The seats were butter-soft beneath my trembling body, and the sudden silence, broken only by the muted drum of rain against the roof, felt like stepping into another world. I pressed myself against the far door, gasping for air, my whole body shaking so violently I couldn't control it. Water dripped from my hair onto the pristine leather, forming small puddles that would probably stain. I should have cared. I didn't. "Drive." My voice came out broken, barely a whisper. "Please, just drive." That's when I noticed him. He sat in the shadows of the back seat, so still I hadn't registered his presence at first. The darkness seemed to cling to him like a cloak, and as my eyes adjusted, I made out the sharp line of his jaw, the slope of his shoulders, beneath what looked like an expensive suit. Even seated, I could tell he was tall, the kind of tall that made you feel small without trying. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched me with eyes I couldn't quite see but could feel on my skin like a physical touch. Marcus appeared outside the window, his fist slamming against the glass. "Get out of the car." He yanked on the handle, but it was locked. "That's my girlfriend. Get out here, you stupid." The man beside me moved then, just slightly. He leaned forward, and a sliver of light from the street lamp caught his face. Sharp cheekbones, a mouth set in a hard line. Eyes so dark they looked black, fixed on Marcus with an expression that made my blood run cold. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Marcus stopped mid-sentence, his hand falling away from the door. I watched his face change, watched anger drain into something else. Recognition, maybe, or fear. He took a step back, then another, his eyes never leaving the man beside me. I didn't know, Marcus said, his voice suddenly smaller. I didn't know she was with you. With him? I wasn't with anyone. I'd just jumped into a stranger's car like a lunatic, and now Marcus was backing away like he'd seen a ghost. The man beside me finally spoke, his voice low and measured, each word dropping into the silence like a stone into still water. Drive. I wasn't sure who he was talking to until the car began to move, smooth and silent. A driver. I could see him now in the front seat, separated from us by a partition of dark glass. He hadn't said a word, hadn't asked questions. He just drove. I turned back to the window. Marcus stood in the rain, growing smaller as we pulled away, his figure dissolving into the darkness until he was gone. Relief flooded through me so suddenly I felt dizzy, and I realized I was crying, silent tears that mixed with the rainwater still dripping down my face. Thank you, I managed, my voice trembling. Thank you so much. I just need to get to... You're bleeding. I blinked, turning to look at him. He was staring at my temple. At the cut Marcus's ring had left. His expression hadn't changed, but something in his tone made me lift my hand to the wound. My fingers came away red. It's nothing, I said quickly. Just a scratch. If you could drop me at... Who was he? The question caught me off guard. I hesitated, my hand still pressed to my temple. My ex-boyfriend. We broke up tonight, and he didn't take it well. He hit you. It wasn't a question, and I didn't answer. What was there to say? Yes, he hit me. Yes, he'd been hitting me for months. I should have left sooner. But leaving was harder than staying, and staying was slowly killing me. The man leaned back against his seat, his eyes never leaving my face. What's your name? Emma. The lie came automatically. I'd learned not to give my real name to strangers, especially not after nights like this. Emma Williams. He smiled then, just a slight curve of his mouth that didn't reach his eyes. You're lying. My heart skipped. I'm not... The tremor in your voice when you said it, the way you looked down and to the left. You're lying. He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he was deciding whether to solve, but I'll let you keep your secrets, for now. The car turned onto a wider street, one lined with trees and elegant townhouses that cost more than I'd make in 10 lifetimes. I recognized this neighborhood from the magazines I'd flipped through during slow shifts at the diner, the kind of place where everyone had drivers and doormen, and lives so different from mine they might as well have been living on another planet. Where are we going? I asked, trying to keep the panic from my voice. Somewhere safe. I don't need safe. I need to go home. To the apartment where he knows you live? His voice remained calm, almost gentle, which somehow made it more unsettling. To the place he'll be waiting? He was right. And I hated that he was right. Marcus knew where I lived. He had a key. I'd given it to him back when I still thought love meant trust, when I believed his promises that he'd never hurt me again. I'll go to a friend's house, I said, though I had no friends left. Marcus had made sure of that, slowly cutting me off from everyone until it was just us, just him, just the cycle of apology and violence that I'd convinced myself was normal. You have no friends? Again, not a question. He read me like I was transparent, like every secret I'd ever kept was written across my skin in ink only he could see. No family nearby, no one to call. That's why you ran into a stranger's car instead of dialing for help. My phone. I'd left it on the kitchen counter when I ran, left it along with my shoes and my dignity and any illusion I'd had that I could fix him. I don't know who you are, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, but I appreciate the help, really. If you just let me out. Do you know what would have happened if I hadn't unlocked that door? He shifted slightly, and I caught the scent of him. Cedar, yes, but also something darker, like smoke and aged whiskey. He would have caught you. And then? I didn't answer because I didn't need to. We both knew what would have happened. I'd seen that look in Marcus's eyes before. The one that said he was past reason, past words, past anything but rage. The car stopped in front of a building that looked like it belonged in a movie. All glass and steel and understated elegance. The driver appeared at my door before I could process what was happening, holding an umbrella to shield me from the rain. I didn't move. "I can't go in there," I said. "You can." The man beside me finally moved, unfolding from his seat with a grace that seemed at odds with his size. He was tall. I'd been right about that. And the way he carried himself suggested he was used to people moving out of his way. "And you will. Why are you helping me?" He paused at the open door, rain misting in around the umbrella's edges. When he looked back at me, his expression was unreadable, but his eyes held something I couldn't name. Something that made my breath catch. "Because you ran," he said simply, "and because he should have let you go." Then he was gone, stepping out into the night, and I was left with a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Stay in the car and eventually have to face Marcus, or follow this stranger into a building that screamed money and power and danger of a different kind. I got out of the car. The lobby was all marble and soft lighting, the kind of place where my wet dress and bare feet looked obscene. A man in a suit, security, I realized, nodded at my rescuer without speaking, his eyes passing over me without judgment or curiosity. We crossed to an elevator with doors that reflected my bedraggled appearance back at me, and I looked away, unable to face what I'd become. The elevator rose silently, and I counted the floors. 10, 20, 30. When it finally stopped, the doors opened directly into an apartment that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city, rain streaming down the glass like tears. The furniture was minimal but expensive, all clean lines and dark wood. Art hung on the walls, real art, the kind you see in museums, and everywhere that same scent of cedar and smoke. "The bathroom is through there," he said, gesturing to a door on the right. "You'll find clothes in the closet. They'll be too big, but they're clean and dry." I stood dripping on his hardwood floor, suddenly aware of how completely insane this situation was. "I don't even know your name." He turned to look at me, and in the soft light of his apartment, I finally got a clear view of him. Young, maybe 30, with dark hair and darker eyes and a face that belonged on magazine covers or movie screens. Handsome in a way that felt dangerous, like looking at something beautiful and wild and likely to bite. "Dante," he said. "My name is Dante." And as I stood there, dripping and bleeding and trying to understand how my life had gone from bad to catastrophic in the span of an hour, I made the second mistake of the night. I believed I was safe. The bathroom was larger than my entire apartment. I stood under the shower spray, watching pink-tinged water circle the drain as I scrubbed away the blood and rain and Marcus's fingerprints from my skin. The water was hot, almost too hot, but I couldn't bring myself to adjust it. The heat felt like punishment and absolution all at once, burning away the last few hours until I could almost pretend they hadn't happened. Almost. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I pressed them against the marble wall, letting the water pound against my back, and tried to breathe through the panic that kept rising in my throat like bile. I'd escaped Marcus. That should have felt like victory. Instead, I just felt lost, unmoored from the only life I'd known, even if that life had been slowly destroying me. The clothes Dante mentioned were folded on the counter when I finally stepped out. A black t-shirt that hung to my knees and cotton pants I had to roll at the waist to keep from tripping. They smelled like expensive detergent and cedar, and when I caught my reflection in the mirror, I looked like a child playing dress-up in her father's closet. The cut on my temple had stopped bleeding, leaving an angry red line that would bruise by morning. I had others. Fingerprint shadows on my upper arms, a darker mark on my ribs where Marcus had shoved me into the kitchen counter. They'd fade eventually. They always did. Until the next time. Except there wouldn't be a next time. I'd finally run. Finally chosen myself over the twisted thing we'd been calling love. I just wished I felt braver about it. When I emerged from the bathroom, I found Dante standing by the windows, a phone pressed to his ear. He spoke in low tones, too quiet for me to make out the words. But something in his posture, the rigid set of his shoulders, the way his free hand curled into a fist, suggested the conversation wasn't pleasant. He ended the call as I approached, pocketing the phone without looking at it. Better? He asked. Cleaner, at least? I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly feeling exposed despite being covered from neck to ankle. Thank you. For the clothes, for everything. He turned to face me fully, and I realized he'd removed his suit jacket. His shirt was black, fitted enough to hint at the frame beneath, and his sleeves were rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms marked with what looked like old scars. He'd loosened his tie, and somehow that small concession to casualness made him seem more dangerous, not less. Sit, he said, gesturing to the leather sofa that probably cost more than I made in a year. I hesitated. Every instinct I'd developed over the past year with Marcus told me not to trust this, not to trust him. But I was so tired, bone-deep exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with running through the rain. I sat. Dante disappeared into another room, returning moments later with a first aid kit that looked too professional to be standard home supplies. He sat beside me, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, and opened the kit with practiced efficiency. Let me see your head. It's fine, really. Let me see it. There was something in his voice that made arguing feel pointless. I turned toward him, tucking my damp hair behind my ear to expose the cut. His fingers were surprisingly gentle as he examined it, tilting my face toward the light with a touch so careful it made my throat tighten. It's not deep, he said, reaching for an antiseptic wipe. But it'll scar if you're not careful. I heal fast. The lie tasted bitter. I never healed fast. I just got better at hiding the damage. He cleaned the wound with steady hands, his face close enough that I could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, the nearly imperceptible scar that cut through his left eyebrow. His eyes were focused, intent. And I found myself studying him the way he'd studied me in the car, trying to understand who he was, why he'd helped me, what he wanted in return. Because everyone wanted something. I'd learned that the hard way. Does he know where you work? Dante asked, pressing a butterfly bandage over the cut. The diner? Yes. But I can't just not show up. I need that job. You needed that job. He set the first aid kit aside and leaned back, his eyes finding mine. You're not going back there. Excuse me? He knows where you work. He knows where you live. Going back to either place is suicide. So what am I supposed to do? The words came out sharper than I intended, edged with the hysteria I'd been holding back. Hide forever? Start over with nothing? I have $17 in my bank account and the clothes on my back. Except these aren't even mine, and no plan beyond making it through tonight. So you make a new plan, just like that. Just like that. I laughed, the sound hollow and desperate. You don't understand. I can't just disappear. I have rent due next week, and my supervisor will fire me if I don't call in. And Marcus will find me. He always finds me. Not this time. The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it sent ice down my spine. How can you possibly know that? Dante was quiet for a long moment, his eyes never leaving mine. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost gentle. Because men like him are cowards. They only hurt people who can't hurt them back. And now you're somewhere he can't reach you. Here? With you? Yes. For how long? A night? 2? I shook my head, standing because sitting still felt impossible. I appreciate what you've done, but I can't stay here. I don't even know you. You know I helped you when you needed it. You know what he called you? I turned to face him, my heart hammering. When he saw you in the car, Marcus said, I didn't know she was with you. Like knowing you changed everything, like he was scared of you. I took a breath, forcing myself to ask the question that had been circling my mind since we left that rainy street. Who are you? Dante stood slowly, his movements controlled and deliberate. He walked to a bar cart near the windows and poured amber liquid into 2 glasses, the sound of it sharp in the quiet room. He held one out to me. Whiskey, he said when I didn't take it. You look like you could use it. I accepted the glass, my fingers brushing his, and warmth shot up my arm like an electric current. I took a sip, and the liquor burned going down, settling hot in my empty stomach. My family owns businesses throughout the city. Dante said, nursing his own drink. Restaurants, nightclubs, real estate were well known in certain circles. What kind of circles? His smile was thin, humorless. The kind where people like your ex know better than to cause problems. Understanding clicked into place, cold and certain. The expensive car, the driver who never spoke. The way Marcus had backed away like Dante was radioactive. The apartment that screamed wealth but felt more like a fortress. I couldn't finish the sentence. Saying it out loud felt too dangerous, like invoking something I couldn't take back. I'm someone who can keep you safe, Dante said, which wasn't an answer, but also told me everything I needed to know. I should have left right then, should have thanked him, walked out the door, and taken my chances with Marcus, and the streets, and whatever came next. But my feet stayed planted on his expensive hardwood floor, and I took another sip of whiskey instead. Why? The question came out as a whisper. Why would you help me? You don't know me. Dante moved closer, closing the distance between us with 2 measured steps. He was tall enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes, and something about the angle made me feel even smaller, more vulnerable. I saw you running, he said. Saw the fear in your eyes, the way you pounded on my window like it was your last chance, and I thought... He paused, his jaw tightening. I thought about my mother. The admission hung between us, raw and unexpected. Your mother? She ran once, too, when I was 8 years old. His voice remained steady, but his eyes had gone somewhere else, somewhere dark. My father found her. She never ran again. I'm sorry. Don't be. He drained his glass in one swallow, setting it down with a sharp click. It taught me something important, that women who run deserve to get away, and men who chase them deserve whatever comes next. The promise in those words should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something unfurl in my chest, something dangerous that felt almost like hope. Stay, Dante said, and it wasn't quite an order, but wasn't quite a request either. Give yourself time to figure out what comes next. You'll be safe here. For how long? As long as you need. It was insane. All of it. Agreeing to stay with a stranger who was clearly involved in things I didn't want to understand, accepting help that would undoubtedly come with a price, believing that safety existed anywhere when I'd spent a year learning it didn't. But the alternative was going back out into the rain, back to an apartment Marcus had keys to, back to a life that had been slowly suffocating me. Okay, I heard myself say. Just for tonight. Tomorrow I'll figure something out. Dante's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Satisfaction, maybe, or triumph. The guest room is down the hall, second door on the right. There are clothes in the dresser, toiletries in the bathroom. Help yourself to anything you need. What about you? Where will you sleep? I have business to attend to. He was already reaching for his phone, his attention shifting away from me with the ease of someone used to managing multiple priorities. I'll be gone most of the night. The doors are locked. Don't open them for anyone. Don't answer the phone if it rings, and if you need anything. He paused, then seemed to decide against whatever he was going to say. You won't need anything. Sleep. He was halfway to the door when I found my voice again. Dante? He stopped, looking back. Thank you. Really? I don't know what would have happened if... Yes, you do. His voice was flat, matter of fact. You know exactly what would have happened. That's why you're here. Then he was gone, the elevator doors closing behind him. And I was alone in a stranger's apartment wearing a stranger's clothes, with nothing but $17 and a rapidly fading sense that any of this was real. I found the guest room easily. It was pristine, untouched, like a hotel room waiting for a guest who never arrived. The bed was enormous, covered in soft gray linens that probably had a thread count I couldn't pronounce. I crawled under the covers fully clothed, too exhausted to care about propriety. Sleep should have been impossible. My mind should have been racing, cataloging all the ways the situation could go wrong, planning my escape route, questioning every decision that had led me here. Instead, I sank into the mattress like a stone into deep water, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt something that almost resembled peace. I didn't hear Dante return in the early hours of morning, didn't hear his footsteps in the hallway, or the quiet sound of his door closing, but sometime before dawn, I woke to find an extra blanket draped over me, and a glass of water on the nightstand that hadn't been there before. And despite everything, despite the danger and the questions and the certainty that I was making another terrible mistake, I pulled the blanket closer and let myself believe, just for a moment, that I really was safe. Morning arrived through floor-to-ceiling windows, sunlight spilling across the guest room in golden streams that made everything look softer than it had any right to be. I woke slowly, my mind sluggish and confused, expecting to find myself in my cramped apartment with its water-stained ceiling and the sound of traffic bleeding through thin walls. Instead, I found luxury, silence, safety. The memories crashed back all at once. Marcus, the rain, Dante's car, this impossible apartment that felt more like a dream than reality. I sat up, my borrowed clothes twisted around my body, and pressed my fingers to my temple. The cut was still there, tender under the butterfly bandage, proof that last night had actually happened. The apartment was quiet. I padded barefoot down the hallway, half expecting to find Dante waiting in the living room with questions I didn't know how to answer. But the space was empty, pristine in the morning light, no sign anyone lived here at all, except for a note on the kitchen counter, written in sharp, precise handwriting. There's food in the refrigerator, coffee in the machine. Press the button on the left. I'll be back this afternoon. Don't leave. Don't leave, like I was a prisoner or a guest or something in between. I made coffee because I didn't know what else to do, watching the dark liquid drip into a cup that probably cost more than my weekly paycheck. The refrigerator was stocked with things I never bought for myself: fresh fruit, expensive cheeses, bread from a bakery that didn't price their items because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it anyway. I ate standing at the counter, feeling like an intruder in someone else's life. Through the windows, the city stretched out below me, a maze of buildings and streets and people living their normal lives, oblivious to the fact that mine had shattered into pieces I didn't know how to put back together. My phone was gone. My apartment keys were gone. My shoes, my purse, my entire life as I'd known it. All of it abandoned in that kitchen when I ran. I had nothing except borrowed clothes and a stranger's charity, and the weight of that dependency sat heavy in my chest. I needed to call work, needed to tell them something, anything, to explain why I wouldn't be coming in for my shift. But Dante's instructions had been clear. Don't answer the phone, don't open the door, don't leave. The hours crawled by with excruciating slowness. I explored the apartment because staying in one place felt impossible, opening doors to find rooms that looked barely used. A home office with a desk that held nothing but a laptop and a single pen. Another guest room. A library with leather-bound books that looked more decorative than read. And then, Dante's bedroom. I knew I shouldn't enter, knew it was a violation of whatever unspoken agreement we'd made when I'd accepted his help, but my hand was already on the doorknob, already pushing it open, and I told myself I was just curious, just trying to understand who this man was and why he'd chosen to help me. The room was dark despite the afternoon sun, blackout curtains keeping the light at bay. The bed was made with military precision, not a wrinkle in sight. More books on the nightstand, these ones worn and dog-eared, actually read. A framed photograph that I couldn't quite make out in the dimness. I was reaching for the lamp when I heard it. The elevator, the mechanical hum of its ascent, growing louder, closer. My heart jumped into my throat, and I backed out of Dante's room quickly, closing the door just as the elevator opened, but it wasn't Dante who stepped out. 3 men emerged, all wearing suits that fit too well to be off the rack, all carrying themselves with the casual confidence of people who'd never been told no. The one in front was older, maybe 50, with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes that swept the apartment with practiced efficiency. Those eyes landed on me, and his expression shifted from neutral to something colder. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice accented with something European, Italian, maybe. I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. I just stood there in the hallway wearing Dante's clothes, looking like exactly what I was, an intruder who didn't belong. "I asked you a question." He took a step closer, and the 2 men behind him fanned out slightly, blocking any path to the elevator. "How did you get in here?" "Dante..." My voice came out as a croak. I cleared my throat and tried again. "Dante let me stay here. Last night." The man's eyebrows rose slightly. Did he? It wasn't a question, and something about his tone made my skin prickle with warning. I'd made a mistake. A huge one. These men knew Dante, but that didn't mean I was safe with them. I should go, I said, taking a step backward. You'll just stay right there. The man pulled out his phone, pressing a single button. The call connected immediately, and he spoke without preamble. We have a situation at your apartment. A girl says you let her stay here. I couldn't hear Dante's response, but I watched the man's face carefully, trying to read what was being said in the tightening of his jaw, the slight narrowing of his eyes. Understood, he said finally, ending the call. He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Dante will be here in 10 minutes. Sit down. Don't move. Don't speak unless spoken to. It wasn't a suggestion. I sat on the edge of the leather sofa, my hands folded in my lap to hide their trembling, while the 3 men positioned themselves around the room like sentries. None of them spoke. None of them even looked at me directly. They just stood there, waiting, and the silence pressed down on me until I thought I might scream just to break it. The 10 minutes felt like hours. When the elevator finally opened again, Dante stepped out, and the change in the room's atmosphere was immediate. The 3 men straightened slightly, their attention shifting to him with a deference that made my stomach clench. Dante's eyes found mine first, and I couldn't read his expression. Then he looked at the older man. Marco, report. We came to discuss the Castellano situation, Marco said. Found her here. She claims you gave her permission to stay. I did. Dante's voice was flat, offering no explanation. Is there a problem? You know the rules about bringing outsiders to this location. I know the rules I made. Dante moved past Marco without breaking stride, his presence commanding attention without demanding it. The girl stays. Are we clear? Marco's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Clear. Good. Now tell me about Castellano. They moved to the far side of the room, speaking in low tones I couldn't quite hear. I caught fragments. Shipment, delays, someone named Luca, who'd apparently made a costly mistake. The words meant nothing to me, but the tension in their postures spoke volumes. I stayed frozen on the sofa, feeling like a child who'd stumbled into an adult conversation she wasn't meant to witness. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to run while I still could. But Dante's earlier words echoed in my mind. Don't leave. The meeting lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, the 3 men filed back into the elevator without another glance in my direction, and I was alone with Dante again. He stood by the windows, his back to me, silent. I'm sorry, I said into the quiet. I didn't know anyone would come. I should have. You should have what? He turned to face me, and his expression was harder than I'd seen it. Hidden? Lied about why you were here? Told them I kidnapped you? No. They think you're my mistress. He said it bluntly, without inflection. A woman I'm keeping here for my convenience. Do you understand what that means? Heat flooded my face. I'll tell them that's not. You'll tell them nothing. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopping close enough that I had to crane my neck to look at him. This is my world, not yours. In my world, women don't stay in men's apartments without reason, and the reason they'll assume is the only one that keeps you safe. Safe from what? From questions I don't want to answer. From attention you don't want. From complications that could get us both killed. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that seemed at odds with his usual control. I brought you here to protect you, but there are limits to what I can do without raising suspicions. Then, let me go. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Let me leave and you won't have to explain anything. And where will you go? Back to Marcus? Back to that apartment where he's probably waiting? I'll figure something out. I always do. No. The single word was final, absolute. You'll stay here until I can arrange something more permanent. You can't just keep me here like a what? His voice dropped lower, dangerous. Like someone under my protection? Like someone I've claimed responsibility for? He leaned down, bringing his face level with mine, and I could see the storm brewing in his dark eyes. You came to me, remember? You pounded on my window and begged me to save you. And I did. Now you're mine to protect, whether you like it or not. Mine. The word hung between us, weighted with implications I didn't want to examine. I'm not yours, I said, but my voice shook, betraying me. I'm not anyone's. You were his. Dante straightened, putting distance between us again. You let him hit you, control you, isolate you from everyone who cared about you. You belonged to him in every way that mattered. At least here, you're safe. The truth of it cut deeper than any of Marcus's blows. I had belonged to him, my time, my choices, my body. I'd given him everything until there was nothing left to give, and then he'd taken more anyway. That's different, I whispered. Is it? Dante's expression softened slightly, and when he spoke again, his voice was gentler. I'm not him. I won't hurt you, but I also won't let you walk out of here unprepared and unprotected. Not while he's still looking for you. How do you know he's looking? Because men like him always do. He moved to the bar cart, pouring himself a drink even though it was barely past 3 in the afternoon. They see women as possessions to be reclaimed, not people with the right to leave, and they don't stop until they either get what they want or something stops them. And you're going to stop him, if necessary? He downed the whiskey in one swallow. But first, you need to understand the situation you're in. Those men who were here, they're part of my organization, my family. And now they think you're important to me. But I'm not. Something flickered across his face, too quick for me to identify. No, you're not. But they don't know that, and it's better if they continue not knowing. Because if they think you're just some random girl I picked up out of pity, you become a liability, a loose end, and loose ends in my world don't survive long. The implications settled over me like a shroud. I'd jumped from one danger into another, trading Marcus's fists for something far more complex and potentially deadly. So what do? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. You stay here. You don't ask questions. You don't leave without me. He set down his glass with careful precision. And when people ask who you are, you tell them you're with me. That's all. No details. No explanations. Just that you're mine. There was that word again. Mine. For how long? Until I say otherwise. It should have felt like a cage, another prison with better furniture and a more attractive warden, but as I sat there in the afternoon light, wearing his clothes and drinking his coffee, and existing in the strange liminal space between captivity and protection, I realized something that terrified me more than Marcus ever had. I didn't want to leave. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And that realization, that I was already starting to depend on Dante the way I'd once depended on Marcus, made me understand just how dangerous this arrangement really was. Dante must have seen something in my face, because his expression shifted, became almost concerned. This isn't permanent, he said, as if reading my thoughts. I'll find you somewhere safe to go, give you money to start over, but it takes time to arrange these things properly. How much time? As much as it takes. He moved toward the hallway, toward his office. I have work to do. There's more food in the kitchen, books in the library. Stay inside. Don't answer the door. Dante? He paused, looking back. Why did you really help me? Last night in the rain. You could have just driven past. Why didn't you? For a long moment he was silent, and I thought he wouldn't answer. Then his expression turned distant, haunted, because I saw my mother in you, he said quietly. And this time, I was old enough to do something about it. Then he was gone, disappearing into his office and closing the door behind him, leaving me alone with the weight of his confession and the growing certainty that I'd traded one form of captivity for another. The only question was whether this cage would save me or destroy me. And I was terrified I already knew the answer. 3 days passed in a blur of routine and restlessness. Dante left early each morning, returning late at night, and in between, I existed in a strange suspended state, neither prisoner nor guest, neither safe nor in danger. The apartment became familiar in the way that beautiful cages do, each luxury a reminder of how far I was from my own life. On the 4th morning, I woke to find him sitting in the living room, still wearing yesterday's clothes, his tie loosened, and his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion. A laptop sat open on the coffee table, casting blue light across his features, and he didn't look up when I entered. "You're still here," I said, more observation than question. Needed to finish something. His voice was rough, unused. He closed the laptop with a soft click and finally met my eyes. "Did I wake you?" "No. I couldn't sleep anyway." I moved to the kitchen, going through the now familiar motions of making coffee. "Want some?" "Please." I made 2 cups, black for him because I'd noticed he never added anything, and brought them to the living room. He accepted his with a nod of thanks, and I sat in the chair across from him, maintaining the careful distance we'd established over the past few days. "I need to ask you something," Dante said after a long silence. "And I need you to answer honestly." My stomach tightened. "Okay." "Your ex, Marcus, what did he do for work?" The question caught me off guard. "He worked at a garage. Auto repair." "Why? Which garage?" "Sal's, over on 14th Street. "Dante, what's this about?" He took a sip of coffee, his expression unreadable. "Marcus Rivera, 27 years old, works at Sal's Auto Repair, lives at 432 Morrison Street, apartment 2B. He paused, watching my reaction. "He also has a record, 2 assault charges, both pleaded down. 1 restraining order from an ex-girlfriend that expired last year. And he's been asking around about you." Ice flooded my veins. "How do you know all this?" "Because I had him investigated." He said it matter-of-factly, as if having someone's entire life researched was perfectly normal. "I needed to know what we're dealing with." "We're not dealing with anything. This is my problem, not yours. It became mine when you got into my car." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his gaze intense. "He's been to your apartment 4 times since that night. Broke your door when you didn't answer. Your landlord called the police, but Marcus was gone by the time they arrived. He's also been to the diner every day, harassing your coworkers, demanding to know where you are." My hands shook around the coffee cup. "Did he hurt anyone?" "Not yet, but he's escalating. Yesterday he followed one of your coworkers home. A girl named Sophie. Sophie. Sweet, 20-year-old Sophie who'd started at the diner last month and looked up to me like an older sister. The thought of Marcus anywhere near her made me nauseous. "I have to go back," I said, standing abruptly. "I have to tell him to leave them alone. That this isn't their fault. Sit down." Dante's voice wasn't loud, but it carried an authority that made me freeze. "You're not going anywhere near him. He's going to hurt someone because of me. He's going to hurt someone because he's violent and unstable, and that's not your fault." Dante stood as well, closing the distance between us. "This is what abusers do. They isolate you, then make you responsible for their actions. Don't fall for it. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." His jaw tightened. "My father used the same tactics on my mother. Made her believe that everything he did was somehow her fault, that if she just tried harder, loved him better, didn't make him angry, he'd stop. But men like that never stop. Not until someone stops them." The pain in his voice was raw, barely concealed beneath the surface. I'd wondered about his mother since that first night, but I'd been too afraid to ask. "What happened to her?" I asked softly. "She died when I was 12. He turned away, moving back to the windows. "Car accident. At least that's what the official report said. But I was old enough by then to understand that accidents in my family's world are rarely accidental." "Your father?" "Had her killed when she tried to leave him for good." His voice was flat, emotionless, which somehow made it worse. He couldn't control her anymore, so he erased her. And I spent every day since then wishing I'd been strong enough to protect her. The confession hung in the air between us. Heavy with years of guilt and grief, I moved closer, drawn by an instinct I didn't fully understand, until I stood beside him at the window. "You were 12, I said. "You couldn't have stopped him." "I know. Logically, I know that." He glanced at me, and the vulnerability in his eyes made my chest ache. "But logic doesn't make it hurt less. It doesn't change the fact that she died afraid and alone, because no one saved her. Is that why you saved me? To make up for not saving her? Maybe." He turned to face me fully. "Or maybe I just couldn't drive past another woman running for her life. Does the reason matter?" "It might." "Why?" "Because I needed to know if I was a person to him, or just a proxy for his dead mother. Because I needed to understand if this protective instinct came from care or guilt. Because somewhere in the past 4 days, I'd started to see him as more than just my rescuer, and that terrified me more than Marcus ever had. But I couldn't say any of that, so I just shook my head. Never mind. Dante studied me for a long moment, and I had the unsettling feeling he saw right through me. Then his phone buzzed, breaking the moment. He pulled it from his pocket, his expression darkening as he read the screen. "I have to go," he said, already moving toward the elevator. "Don't leave. Don't open the door. I'll be back by tonight." "Dante, wait." But the elevator doors were already closing, and I was alone again. The day stretched endlessly. I tried to read, tried to distract myself with television, tried everything to stop thinking about Marcus terrorizing my coworkers and Dante out there, doing God knows what in his mysterious world. By the time afternoon bled into evening, I was pacing the apartment like a caged animal. When the elevator opened just after 7, I practically ran to it, expecting Dante. It wasn't Dante. Marco stepped out, followed by a woman I'd never seen before. Tall and elegant, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that assessed me with cold calculation. She wore a dress that probably cost more than my car, and diamonds glittered at her throat and wrists. "So you're the stray Dante picked up," she said, her accent matching Marco's. Italian, definitely. Her voice carried the kind of cultured disdain that money and breeding produced. I took an involuntary step back. He's not here. "I know where my nephew is." She moved into the apartment like she owned it, trailing her fingers over furniture, examining everything with a critical eye. "I came to see you." "Why?" "To understand what's so special about you that Dante would break protocol." She turned to face me, and her beauty was almost painful. The kind of perfect features that belonged in old paintings or marble sculptures. "He doesn't bring women here, ever. This apartment is sacred space, yet here you are, wearing his clothes, drinking his coffee, living in his sanctuary like you belong." "I don't belong here," I said quickly. "I'm just staying until what? Until he finds you a new apartment, gives you money to start over?" She laughed, the sound cold and sharp. "That's what he told you?" "Yes." "And you believed him?" I didn't answer, which was answer enough. She circled me slowly, like a predator evaluating prey. "Let me tell you how this ends, girl. Dante gets bored. Dante moves on. And you either accept whatever crumbs he offers and disappear quietly, or you become a problem. And problems in our world have a very short life expectancy. I'm not trying to be a problem. No one ever is." She stopped in front of me, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Something expensive and floral that made me think of funeral bouquets. "But you are one, simply by being here. My nephew has enemies, rivals who would love to exploit any weakness. And you, my dear, are a glaring weakness. Then I'll leave. Too late for that. You've been seen. My men know about you. Word spreads fast in our circles." Her smile was sharp as broken glass. "The only question now is whether you're smart enough to play the role Dante's assigned you, or foolish enough to complicate things." "What role?" "His mistress. His possession. The woman he's claimed." She tilted her head, studying me. "Can you do that? Can you smile and nod and pretend to be madly in love with a man you barely know? Can you convince his enemies that you're important enough to him that touching you would mean war?" My throat felt tight. "I don't know how to do any of that." "Then learn quickly." She moved toward the elevator, Marco falling into step behind her. "Because if you can't convince them you're valuable to Dante, they'll see you for what you really are, a liability, and liabilities get eliminated." "Wait." But they were gone, the elevator descending, leaving me alone with the weight of her warning and the growing certainty that I'd stumbled into something far more dangerous than I'd imagined. When Dante returned 3 hours later, I was still standing by the windows, watching the city lights blur through tears I refused to let fall. "What happened?" He was at my side immediately, his hand cupping my face, tilting it toward him. "Did someone come here? Did someone hurt you?" "Your aunt was here." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "She wanted to meet the stray you picked up." Dante's expression went cold. "What did she say to you?" "The truth. That I'm a weakness. a liability, that your enemies will use me against you if they get the chance. I pulled away from his touch, wrapping my arms around myself. She's right, isn't she? I've put you in danger just by being here. My aunt is a manipulative woman who spent her entire life playing power games. He caught my arm, turning me back to face him. Don't let her get in your head, but she's not wrong. I am a weakness, and I don't know how to be what you need me to be. What do you think I need you to be? Convincing? Strong? Someone who looks like they belong in your world. I gestured at myself, at the borrowed clothes and bare feet, and face scrubbed clean of makeup. I'm none of those things. I'm just a waitress who ran from her abusive boyfriend. I don't know how to play these games. Good. The word surprised me. Dante stepped closer, and the heat of his body chased away some of the chill his aunt had left behind. I don't want you to play games. I don't want you to be anything other than what you are. And what am I? His eyes searched mine, dark and intense. You're the woman who was brave enough to run. Brave enough to pound on a stranger's window and beg for help. Brave enough to survive. His hand came up to cup my cheek again, his thumb brushing away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. You're stronger than you think, and you're exactly where you need to be. How can you know that? Because I'm not letting you go. The words were soft, almost tender, but they carried the weight of an oath. Not to Marcus. Not to my aunt's manipulations. Not to anyone who wants to use you or hurt you. You're under my protection now, and that means something in my world. It means I'm yours. I said it without thinking, the words slipping out like a confession. Yes. No hesitation. No apology. Just simple truth. It does. I should have been terrified. Should have recognized the possessiveness in his voice for what it was, another form of control, another cage with better locks. But standing there in his apartment, with his hand on my face and his eyes burning into mine, all I felt was safe. And that realization, that I felt safer with a man I barely knew than I ever had with Marcus, changed everything. Okay, I whispered. Okay? I'll stay. I'll play the role. I took a shaky breath. I'll be yours. For as long as you need me to be. Something flashed in Dante's eyes. Triumph, possession. Or maybe something deeper. He pulled me closer, until we were nearly touching, until I could feel his breath on my face. You have no idea what you just agreed to, he said, his voice rough. Then show me. For a heartbeat, we stood frozen, balanced on the edge of something dangerous and irreversible. Then, Dante's control shattered. His mouth found mine in a kiss that was nothing like Marcus's brutal claims of ownership. This was fire and hunger and desperate need. His hands tangling in my hair, pulling me closer, consuming me. I kissed him back with everything I had. All my fear and loneliness and the awful, terrifying hope that maybe this time, with this man, I could be safe and wanted all at once. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante pressed his forehead to mine. You're mine now, he whispered against my lips. Completely. Do you understand? I should have said no. Should have run while I still could, but I was so tired of running, and his arms felt like the only safe place left in the world. I understand, I said. And I sealed my fate. The weeks that followed blurred together like watercolors in rain, each day bleeding into the next, transforming me from the frightened girl who'd pounded on a stranger's window into something else entirely, someone who belonged in Dante's world. Even if I still didn't fully understand it, he was careful with me in those early days, teaching me without making it feel like lessons. How to hold myself when his associates were present, chin up, shoulders back, never apologizing for taking up space. How to dress in the clothes he'd had delivered, elegant pieces that made me look like I belonged at his side. How to respond when people asked who I was with just 2 words. I'm Dante's. The possessiveness in that phrase should have bothered me. Instead, it became armor. Marcus tried twice more to find me. I learned about it in fragments, Dante's tense phone calls conducted in Italian, the way his jaw would tighten when he thought I wasn't looking, the increased security that appeared outside the building overnight, but he kept the details from me, protecting me from the knowledge of just how desperately Marcus was searching. until the night everything changed. I was curled up on the sofa reading when Dante came home earlier than expected, his expression darker than I'd ever seen it. Blood stained his shirt cuff, just a small spot, barely visible, but I'd learned to notice these things. "What happened?" I asked, setting down my book. "Marcus happened." He poured himself a drink with hands that weren't quite steady. He found Sophie leaving work tonight, grabbed her in the parking lot, demanded she tell him where you were. My blood turned to ice. "Is she okay?" "She's fine. Scared, but fine." My men were watching the diner. They intervened before he could hurt her. He downed the whiskey in one swallow. "But he's getting more desperate, more dangerous. It's only a matter of time before what? Before he hurts someone?" I stood, my whole body trembling with rage and fear and guilt. "This is my fault. I should have handled this differently. I should have." "You should have what?" Dante crossed to me in 2 strides, gripping my shoulders. "Stayed with him? Let him keep hitting you? Apologized for having the audacity to want to be safe? No. But I could have." "There was nothing you could have done." His voice was fierce, almost angry. "Men like Marcus don't stop because you ask nicely. They don't stop because you explain how much they're hurting you. They only stop when they're made to stop." "So what do we do?" Dante was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching mine. Then he said, "We make him stop." The finality in his tone sent a chill down my spine. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm going to have a conversation with Marcus. Make him understand that pursuing you any further would be inadvisable. You're going to threaten him. I'm going to promise him consequences if he doesn't walk away." Dante's expression was hard, unyielding. "And I'm going to make sure he believes me." "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. He's my problem, Dante. My ex-boyfriend. My mistake. I should be there. You should be here, safe, where he can't touch you." He cupped my face, his touch gentler than his words. "This is what I do. Let me handle it. I'm tired of being handled." The words came out sharper than intended, edged with weeks of frustration at being protected and sheltered and kept in the dark. I'm tired of being weak, of running, of letting other people fight my battles. Being smart enough to accept help isn't weakness, and being brave enough to face him isn't stupidity. I pulled away from his touch, lifting my chin the way he'd taught me. "I need to do this. I need to look him in the eye and show him I'm not afraid anymore. But you are afraid." He said it gently, without judgment. "I can see it in your eyes. Of course I'm afraid. But I'm going anyway." I moved closer, placing my hand over his heart, feeling it beat strong and steady beneath my palm. "You taught me that being afraid doesn't mean being powerless. Let me prove I learned something." Dante stared at me for a long moment, conflict playing across his features. Then he sighed, a sound of resignation mixed with something that might have been pride. "If you come, you follow my lead," he said. "You don't speak unless I tell you to. You don't move unless I say so. And if anything goes wrong, you run. Understood?" "Understood. I mean it. You run, and you don't look back." "I won't need to run. You'll be there." His expression softened slightly. "Such faith in me. You've earned it." He pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my forehead that felt like a benediction and a promise. "You're braver than you know," he murmured against my skin, "and more stubborn than I anticipated." "Is that a complaint?" "It's an observation." He pulled back, his eyes meeting mine. "Get dressed. Something that makes you feel powerful. We leave in an hour." The warehouse was exactly the kind of place I'd imagined when I thought about Dante's world. All exposed brick and shadows, located in a part of town where police sirens were background noise, and people knew better than to ask questions. 2 black cars sat outside, their engines running, and men in dark suits flanked the entrance like sentries. Marco waited by the door, his expression grim when he saw me. "Is this wise?" he asked Dante in Italian, though I'd picked up enough by now to understand. "No," Dante replied in English, his hand firm on my lower back. "But she insisted. The girl has courage," Marco said, switching to English as well. "Or stupidity. Time will tell which." "Both, probably," I said, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. Marco's eyebrows rose slightly, and something that might have been approval flickered in his eyes. He's inside. Bound but unharmed. For now. My heart hammered against my ribs as we entered the warehouse. The main floor was mostly empty except for a single chair in the center. Harsh overhead lights creating a spotlight effect. And in that chair, hands bound behind him, was Marcus. He looked smaller than I remembered, diminished. His face was bruised. Someone had hit him, though not badly enough to do real damage. When he saw me, his eyes widened, then narrowed with familiar rage. "You," he spat. "You did this. You brought these thugs after me. I didn't bring anyone after you." My voice echoed in the cavernous space. "You did that yourself when you wouldn't let me go." "Let you go?" He struggled against his bonds. "You're mine. You don't just leave. She's not yours." Dante's voice cut through Marcus's rant like a blade. "She never was." Marcus's attention shifted to Dante, and I saw fear flash across his face before anger covered it. "Who the hell are you? I'm the man who's going to explain your new reality." Dante moved forward with predatory grace, circling Marcus like a shark. "You're going to stop looking for her, stop going to her workplace, stop harassing her friends. You're going to forget she exists." "Or what? You'll kill me?" Marcus tried for bravado, but his voice shook. "I'm not afraid of you. You should be." Dante stopped directly in front of him, leaning down until they were eye level. "But I'm not going to kill you. That would be too easy, too quick. Instead, I'm going to make you a promise." He pulled out his phone, swiping through until he found what he was looking for, then turned the screen toward Marcus. I couldn't see what it showed, but I watched Marcus's face drain of color. "That's your mother's house," Dante said conversationally. "Your sister lives there too, doesn't she? With her 2 kids? Beautiful family." "You stay away from them," Marcus growled. "They have nothing to do with this. Neither did Sophie. But that didn't stop you from grabbing her in a parking lot." Dante pocketed his phone. "So here's how this works. If you ever, and I mean ever, contact her again, look for her again, even think about her in a way I don't like, your family will pay the price. Do I make myself clear? You can't." "I can. And I will." Dante's voice dropped to something cold and deadly. "I have people watching your mother's house right now. Watching your sister's kids walk to school. One word from me, and they become collateral damage in your vendetta against a woman who just wanted to be free of you. It was a bluff. It had to be. Dante wouldn't really hurt innocent people, would he? But looking at his face, at the absolute conviction in his expression, even I couldn't be sure. Marcus must have seen the same thing because his resistance crumbled. "Okay," he said, the word barely audible. "Okay. I'll leave her alone." "You'll do more than that." Dante gestured, and Marco stepped forward with a piece of paper and a pen. "You're going to sign a statement confessing to domestic violence. Names, dates, details. Everything you did to her over the past year. That's insurance," Dante continued. "If you ever break our agreement, this statement goes to the police. You'll lose your job, your freedom, and whatever's left of your reputation. Understand?" Marcus stared at the paper, his jaw working. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, and whatever he saw in my face made his shoulders slump in defeat. "Fine," he muttered. "Give me the damn pen." Marco unbound one of his hands, and Marcus signed the statement with jerky, angry movements. When he was finished, Marco took the paper and stepped back, and Dante turned to me. "Do you have anything you want to say to him?" I stepped forward, my legs steadier than I'd expected. Marcus looked up at me, and I saw it. The moment he realized he'd lost. That I was no longer the frightened girl he could control with his fists and his words. "I forgave you so many times," I said quietly. "Every time you said you were sorry. Every time you promised you'd change. I believed you. I convinced myself that if I just loved you enough, supported you enough, you'd become the man I needed you to be. But you can't change someone who doesn't want to change. And you never wanted to. You just wanted someone you could break." "I loved you," he said, and there might have been genuine pain in his voice. "No, You didn't. You loved owning me. There's a difference. I took a breath, feeling something heavy lift from my chest. I hope you get help. I hope you learn to be better, but I'm done sacrificing myself trying to save you. Goodbye, Marcus. I turned away, and Dante's hand found mine, squeezing gently. Together, we walked toward the exit, leaving Marcus bound to that chair in his pool of harsh light. You're just going to leave me here, Marcus called after us. Someone will untie you in an hour, Dante said without looking back. Use that time to think about the choice you're making. Because if I ever see you again, it won't be in a warehouse. It'll be in a morgue. The threat hung in the air as we stepped outside, and I sucked in deep breaths of cool night air, feeling like I'd been holding my breath for months and could finally exhale. Are you okay? Dante asked once we were in the car, his driver pulling away from the warehouse. I don't know. I stared at my hands, watching them tremble. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever done. It was necessary. He pulled me close, and I let myself collapse against him, feeling the adrenaline drain away, leaving exhaustion in its wake. You needed to see him powerless, needed to take back control. Did you mean it? About his family? No. The admission came without hesitation. I would never hurt innocent people, but he doesn't know that. Fear of consequences is often more effective than the consequences themselves. I tilted my head to look at him. You're a complicated man, Dante. And you're a stubborn woman who's making my life infinitely more complicated. But he smiled as he said it, pressing a kiss to my temple. What am I going to do with you? Keep me? The words came out smaller than intended, vulnerable in a way that terrified me. His arms tightened around me. Always. The months that followed were the strangest, most beautiful of my life. I moved from being Dante's protected guest to something more. His partner, his confidant, the woman who stood at his side at dinners and meetings and made his associates believe I belonged there. Because somewhere along the way, I started to believe it myself. I enrolled in online classes, studying business management because Dante insisted I needed goals beyond him. He hired a therapist who specialized in trauma and abuse, and I spent painful hours unpacking what Marcus had done to me and learning that survival wasn't the same as healing. I reconnected with Sophie, who'd been terrified but ultimately unharmed, and slowly rebuilt the friendships Marcus had destroyed. And Dante, complicated, dangerous, protective Dante, became the home I'd never had. Not because he owned me or controlled me, but because he saw me, all of me. The broken parts and the brave parts and the parts still learning the difference. 6 months after that night in the warehouse, we received word that Marcus had moved to another state, chasing a job opportunity. The statement Dante held remained locked in a safe, insurance we'd never need to use because Marcus had finally learned what it meant to let go. Do you miss your old life? Dante asked me one evening as we stood by the windows, watching the city lights flicker like fallen stars. No. I didn't have to think about it. That wasn't a life. It was survival. And this? He pulled me closer, his warmth chasing away the chill of the glass. What is this? I turned in his arms, meeting his eyes, those dark, intense eyes that had seen too much, but still looked at me like I was something precious. This is living, I said. Finally living. He kissed me then, slow and deep and full of unspoken promises. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine, he said, the words simple but weighted with everything we'd survived to get here. I don't say it enough, but I do. You're not just under my protection anymore, you're in my heart. Tears pricked my eyes, happy ones this time, free of fear and pain. I love you too. Even though you're bossy and overprotective and slightly terrifying. Only slightly? I'm being generous. He laughed, the sound rich and warm, and I realized I'd never heard him laugh before that moment. We'd had smiles, touches, passionate nights, and quiet mornings. But laughter, pure, unguarded joy, was new. Maybe that's what healing looked like, not the absence of scars, but the ability to feel happiness despite them. Dante's aunt had been wrong about one thing. I wasn't a weakness. Together, we were stronger than either of us had been alone. He taught me to be brave, and I taught him it was okay to be soft. He gave me safety, and I gave him someone worth protecting, not out of obligation, but out of love. The girl who'd run through the rain that night was gone, transformed into a woman who knew her worth and refused to settle for anything less than being cherished. And the man who'd unlocked his car door for a desperate stranger had found something he hadn't known he was looking for, someone who saw past the danger to the heart beneath. We stood there as the city glittered below us, two people who'd found each other in darkness and chosen to build something bright. Marcus was a ghost from a life I'd left behind. The fear was gone. The running was over. I was home. And home, I'd learned, wasn't a place. It was standing in Dante's arms, safe and loved, and finally, beautifully free. The rain had washed away the girl I'd been. What remained was the woman I was always meant to become, stronger, braver, and entirely, irrevocably his. Just as he was mine,